This is Joe from Within the Ruins, and you're watching Richard Metal Fan.
What's up, guys? Episode 293 of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Joe from the Almighty Within the Ruins. So, how are you doing today, Joe?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, man, anytime. So, kind of what I want to talk about is, of course, I want to talk about the new album Phenomena too, but I also want to talk about your musical history and sort of do a history of the band. So, take me back to young Joe. So, kind of growing up, what were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to start playing guitar?
Um, I got a guitar when I was 8, I think, and I think first band was pretty much Metallica, and well, Black Sabbath, Metallica. When I started playing electric guitar around like 10, that was the kind of stuff I started learning. Pantera. Um, yeah, that's pretty much what got me started in the very beginning. You want me to just keep going?
Yeah, sure. Keep going.
Um, well, I played by myself, till I met our drummer. I had a little like, remember those recorders where you have the mini tape and you could
Yeah.
talk into them? I recorded on those things forever. And then I met our drummer when I was a freshman in high school. So 2000, I met our drummer, still now drummer. And we pretty much jammed and learned together. Like he didn't really play drums when I met him. He had a kit, but he wasn't much of a drummer, and I wasn't great either. But yeah, throughout high school, we just kept writing songs, kept we started playing some small shows around town, and that's pretty much what we did until we recorded our first proper EP, which is Driven by Fear. I think it's still out there
Yeah.
in like 2005, I think.
Yeah, because
Uh,
came out in 2006. I believe, like, of course, the band formed in '05.
yeah, I'd say around '04, '05, we came up with the name and started like writing for that album. We recorded with the guy Paul in Northampton, and we were shopping that EP to labels. So I was making press kits, sending shit out. We started doing some like DIY touring,
Yeah.
booked all our own stuff, our tours on MySpace, and played at like a bunch of empty bars for the first few years.
Yeah.
And then we did our Empire EP, and at that time I was, fully into like metalcore, what all this shit that was going on. In Flames, Arch Enemy, As I Lay Dying, Kill Switch. We had a great local scene, Western Mass. Bunch of metalcore bands came out of Western Mass, and yeah, we just kept at it, man, until we got signed to Victory and did Creature was like our first real full length.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and hard to believe, like, of course, like, Within the Ruins has been around for about 20 years now. I got to think about it, Joe. 20 years of Within the Ruins. Like, did you guys think you'd be around for this long?
No, I don't think you can really think that like when you're especially in the beginning, like we just knew we loved what we were doing and we just had enough, you know, we invested ourselves 100%, so we just couldn't stop doing it even if we weren't like a huge success or we didn't blow up overnight. Our band has been like a very slow but steady growth. Um but it's crazy to think now. Yeah, never would have thought that it'd still be, it's still like a main part of my all of our lives. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. But then tell me about making like your debut full length album, Creature. So, what was sort of like the thought process going into making the debut full length Within the Ruins album?
Well, it was rushed and it was cuz we got signed on. They hit us up through MySpace, and once we I don't know if I really had any songs for the album, but once we signed, they pressured us into putting an album out like immediately. They want us in the studio immediately. So I had a garage at my old house where I set up all my shit, and I would write out there and kind of record on tape. Um, the idea was to impress and like kind of make the music as crazy as I could, because it would crazy, or I guess technical would be a more professional way to say it. But the idea was to like just make crazy sounding shit that would impress people and make people go like, "What the hell is this?" Um, so I wrote that. I literally wrote most of the demos in that album in like less than a month, and then we were at Zing Studios here in Westfield, where a bunch, Killswitch did most of their stuff there when they started. All that remains. This is a pretty well known studio. Yeah, I guess that was the mindset was to grow from the Empires EP we did before that and start to take on like that technical style and just try to impress everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and this year does mark 15 years of Creature. Is there any chance we can get like a celebration of that album? Maybe like throw in some like deep cuts that y'all haven't played live in forever?
Oh, live?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny because we're starting some tour stuff in like October, and we got to a point where we were like, we need to redo the whole set list. We've been playing like this group of songs for a while now. And so yep, I'm relearning some Creature stuff actually right now. We're talking about putting like two or three songs in the set from Creature that we've actually never even played live. So we'll be doing some stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when the album came out, did you start like touring like more like mostly outside of like Massachusetts and New England and stuff?
Yeah, well, before that we were already doing like the whole US, but like I said, this was like these were not real tours. It was us. We bought a van, we drove around. Like we'd have like four shows on a week off and just hang out somewhere. And um, but yeah, like Creature, but then really Invade, which were within a year of each other. Not to skip ahead, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's when we decided we were touring full time, and we finally got a booking agent, and we were like, give us any and every tour we can do because we were fully committed to just being on the road and not home.
Yeah. Yeah, but then tell me about making the second album, Invade, because usually with the debut album, you have your entire life to write, and there's a lot of hype with the first album. When it came to making Invade, did you felt pressure to follow up Creature?
Um, not necessarily to follow up with the material, but again, I was pressured because I remember for that one we drove out to White Lake, Michigan, recorded at a different studio with Josh Wickman, who still mixed this album that's coming out. We've been friends with him for a while, but I remember driving out there, in our van and trailer, and I still had like three songs that weren't even done because again we didn't have the time. It was like we were on tour and the label was like, we want another one like now. You need to put your second album out now. So like rushed again, didn't have a lot of time to like necessarily to grow or like really put any focus into what we were doing. It was to me, it was again just like a pile of riffs that we like somehow got together and got them to be songs. I even set up my studio rig at the studio when we were recording Invade. So if I was tracking and recording guitars and then it was somebody else's turn, I'd go over to my rig and continue working on like I know Verses, one of the songs on Invade. I literally wrote that while we were there because I didn't have enough songs. So I'm talking like really rushed, like just sit down and play with whatever comes out. The songs are cool, but again, it was super rushed. And yeah, so there was some pressure in that aspect, but also didn't feel anything from Creature. As much as people talk about it as it being maybe their favorite or like our breakthrough album, we didn't break through as a band. We still weren't doing shit for tours that mattered. We still, I don't think it even sold much, but for some reason that's like everybody's album.
Yeah. And then, of course, in between Invade and Elite, you did an EP called Omen. So, how did the idea of that come to be?
The reason we did Omen is because we went to Europe with Carnifex and we didn't have enough money.
Yeah,
So
our
we
boys.
took yeah, Carnifex fucking helped us out huge.
Yeah,
We got to know them because they were on Victory as well.
yeah, friends with those guys.
They're great people. Scott like kind of took us under they took us under their wing and like we got an offer to do Europe with them, but we didn't have any money and the offer sucked. We were already going into it going to be negative. and we had to split a bus with them. So we're like, let's just do it and figure it out later. Hopefully, we'll sell enough merch. And we ended up coming home like we're negative like 15 grand. So literally, I was asking our label at the time for money to pay all the bills, and they said, no, we're not just going to give you money. How about you go record an EP? Um, that's literally why we did Omen. So I had already been working on stuff. I had the two songs that are on Omen, the two originals, and
Controller and Infamy.
yeah, those were going to be the start of Elite. But so we went back out to White Lake. We whipped those songs together, did the two covers while we were in the studio. Didn't prepare anything. We just picked two songs and did those while we were there. And I think we got like 10 grand for doing that EP, and we just used that to pay our bills and keep going. So
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Yeah, and I love those songs, especially the Kansas cover and Metallica. So, what made you guys decide to cover those songs in particular?
Dude, it's still weird to me, to be honest. Like we never thought we would do covers. We haven't done covers since, but uh, um, like I said earlier, huge Metallica fan. So I think our drummer and I were like, yeah, let's do a Metallica song and let's do one that a lot of people don't like, not a popular one. Um, Fight Fire with Fire, like they don't play that live much, and I feel like the other songs on that album are more popular. So we did that one. It was fun. Steven from Wretched actually did the guitar solo on that song for us. We sent that out to him because he's a super Metallica fan. We thought that'd be fun. Kansas, we did. I have no clue why we chose that song. We wanted to do something not metal, and we had a list of like 10 random songs we all came up with, and our other guitar player Jay, that was in the band at that time, was, I think, he did most of that cover. Like I didn't really do much on that one. I usually write all and record all our stuff, but he took the reins on that one actually. So yeah, so to me, those are still kind of weird that we have those out there, but and I barely even remember doing them. But I'm glad we did. It's cool.
Yeah. And then next up is Elite. I like this album. I feel like it's sort of like a another evolution within the Ruin sound. So what was sort of like the thought process making Elite?
Okay, let's see. That one we had that one was when we switched labels.
To
So we got off.
E1.
Yep, we got off Victory somehow. And this is just a quick backstory. We weren't signed for a year. We weren't touring for a year. So I wrote that, and then we went to Josh again, Josh Wickman, to his studio to record it all. And we did it all ourselves. And I think Josh actually fronted us the recording time because we didn't have a label. But I was like, dude, we're going to record the whole thing. We're shopping for labels, and we're going to send the label the whole next album. It's going to be good to go, and then we'll pay after that. So like we had that album done for over a year till we signed to E1, and then it was all ready, and it was just a matter of getting it put out. But that was when we were touring with a lot more like deathcore bands. We were touring with like um, just I think that the sound of that album took in like a lot of elements of like what was going on in metal at the time, who we were touring with, the types of shows we were playing. Like we wanted it to be heavier. We wanted more breakdowns, if breakdowns. But yeah, there was definitely some growth. Because again, we had more time with that one. That was one of the ones where they didn't force us to just go into the studio and do it and bang it out quick. So
Yeah.
I had time myself to kind of like focus on some different types of riffing and some different inspirations, and I think the mix was pretty different on that one, which always helps. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think it's like probably in my opinion the most technical within the Ruins album to date.
Yeah, well, so it is technical. I think it's the one about that album is it's fun. It's like the structure got better. Um, so in a way, to me, the songs are simpler because there's a little bit of structure. as opposed to the two albums before that, which was just like a pile of shit thrown together. Yeah, there's definitely some cool shit on that album. I haven't listened to it in a while, but
Yeah. And I love how you did like a sequel to Ataxia. You did Ataxia too. So what made you guys decide to do like a part two of that?
um, well, it was obvious for one, it was really popular. Once we put out and fade, everybody we always wanted to do instrumentals because I just think that's cool to have that like dynamic on the album. But yeah, it was pretty popular, and I think it was again because of the idea was like how Metallica did Unforgiven and Unforgiven 2. And
Yeah.
I was like, we could do a part two of a song, and that was like one of the more popular songs. So and that was supposed to be it. It was going to be part two, and that's it. Or sorry, am I on the wrong one here? I think Elite was part three,
Yeah.
right?
No, this is part two.
Okay, well, I'm trying to.
Yeah,
Either way,
because it
that's
continued on for like 5 parts.
exactly. Yeah. So whatever album it was, we decided to do part two, and then it just never stopped.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you started with Invade and now with Elite, and then you continue with part three with Phenomena. Now, I love this album. It literally came out a year after Elite. Did you start writing for Phenomena right after Elite came out?
Yeah, I was well, since we had that year where the album was done and it was just sitting like waiting to get put out, I was already writing Phenomena. Yeah. And Phenomena was the first album that we did on our own. As far like I engineered and tracked everything at my studio, and yeah, that was I was well into Phenomena writing by the time Elite came out, so that's why they came out so close to each other.
Yeah. And I love how I guess like the lyrically it talks about sort of like superheroes like Wolverine and Batman and stuff. So what sort of how'd that idea come to be sort of like talk about like superheroes and stuff?
That was Tim's idea. So our singer before Steve, Tim just he just came up with the idea to write from the perspective of comic book characters or superheroes. And at first I said, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I guess let's do it because I never really wrote lyrics. I just wrote the music, and then the I was always used to the vocalist coming in with his stuff, and then we just put it over the music. But yeah, that was 100% Tim's idea, and I think it came out pretty cool. I didn't really know what to expect with like kind of tying comic book stuff to metal, but it did. It wasn't necessarily like you had to be a fan or you had to know that either of what the lyrical content was because like, it still there's still good lyrics and stories, so they apply to anybody, however you want to interpret them. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I pretty much a lot of people describe it as like technical metal for comic nerds.
okay, that's cool. Whatever works.
Totally. But then moving on to the next album, Halfway Human, I like this album. This is sort of really what for me was when I started really becoming a fan of Within the Ruins. I mean, I liked all the other stuff before that, but this is really what made me solidify myself to be a big fan of Within the Ruins. So how was the thought process going into making Halfway Human?
Um, well, let's see. We had Paulo, our bass player, who joined after Phenomena. That was a big thing. He
Yeah.
joined after Phenomena came out, and
And how do you join?
um, I just called him out of the blue. Like we knew Silence the Messenger, his previous band, because we always, whenever we played in Texas at the White Rabbit, San Antonio, those they would come out. So we just became friends with those guys, and he played guitar for Silence the Messenger, but I randomly called him because I knew he could perform. He looked good on stage. He was like he had all that. So I'm like called him out of the blue and said, "Do you want to just play bass for us?" And he was like, "Not guitar." And I said, "No, just bass." And so he's like, "Sure, I'll try it." And so he could also sing clean pretty well. So that's why on Halfway Human, since he was in the band, we are like, let's use this. Let's try out some let's go. We've done melodic singing in the past, but it had been a while. So that's why there's a lot of that. So that changed the writing a little bit because I was writing with like big choruses in mind, and I was trying to like write sections to have melodic singing in. And I think like also with that one, we were trying to make the songs just structured better and a little bit more digestible, but without losing the
Heaviness.
some of the without losing the heaviness or like the technicality or like the stuff that we were kind of getting known for at that point. So like we were trying to do the melodic singing without watering shit down. And I think I feel like it's kind of mixed reviews on that one. Not that I really I don't I hate reviews and I hate comments, so I don't pay attention if I can. But when you're around, it's been a long enough time that I've talked to enough people. Yeah, it was a different album than I think what people were expecting after Phenomena. But again, it was really fun to do because we did it ourselves, and there was a lot of new elements too
Yeah.
that carried that carried from that point into Blackheart and even the new Phenomena. So.
Yeah, and I feel like that sort of like is the next evolution. Having like the clean vocals in there adds sort of like another kind of like layer to the sound, almost like another like icing on the cake right there. And depending now, you got the two singers from Paulo and then Tim, and well, of course now with Steve having how depending on like who does what vocals there. Do you have to like figure out like when it comes to like the writing of the songs, being like okay, this part Tim is here, and then this part Paulo is here.
Yeah, yes and no. Like if I was writing and like I said, I had choruses in mind, repeating choruses that could probably take melodic singing. But when it came time to do vocals, Steve and Paulo were just as involved because we were all in the room together and we get to a part in a song and either Steve would be like, okay, I got the lyrics for here, but I really think Paulo should start singing the pattern or use these lyrics. Start with some singing shit and see what we come up with. And sometimes it would work, and then or sometimes we'd be like, nope, Steve, just scream it. Or sometimes we would do a little of both. So there's a few songs in there where there's like Paulo's doing his own thing, like a version of the lyrics, doing some melodic singing, and then Steve's kind of in between, like coming in and out. Or sorry, depends on what singer we're talking about. But for Halfway Human, Tim's kind of coming in and out with backing vocals and shit like that. But yeah, a lot of it just happened as we recorded vocals. We just figured out, we did a bunch of different takes and just figured out what worked best, and then just went with it.
Yeah, and then talking about the last album, Blackheart, I thought that was a good album. Like, of course, now having being a new vocalist, Steve in the band. So, how did he end up joining Within the Ruins?
Well, obviously we already had the Silence the Messenger connection going with Paulo, so we were on the road doing a headline tour. Tim had to go home with and ended up leaving the band. We ended up parting ways after that tour. But while we were on the road, we still had shows. So we were traveling to the next show somewhere in Oregon, I think, and with no vocalist. We were gonna just go play the shows instrumentally until we found somebody. But Paulo said, "What about Steve, my old vocalist?" And I was like, "Okay, I was like, you really think he would just join? Because he was not really doing music for a minute now." But we called him, said, "You want to sing for our band?" And he said, "I'll think about it. When?" And I said, "We're on tour now, so tomorrow." And he was like, "Fuck, I don't know." But he ended up flying out to where we were within a day or two. Finished out the tour with us. He had a notebook in front of him on stage every night with all the lyrics because he didn't know all the songs that well. But yeah, that's how we picked up Steve. And then we finished the tour and we talked more. And he said, "Yeah, I think I'd like to stay with it and stay with the band and keep going." So
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny now, I guess Within the Ruins is almost kind of like now a super group now of members of Within the Ruins and also Silence the Messenger.
yeah, sure, yeah. I mean, Silence the Messenger was great too, man. They
Yeah.
just did what they could, and sometimes you hit a dead end kind of, or you just have to make a decision. So, but yeah, I'm glad we have the best lineup that we've ever had for sure
Yeah.
of members.
Yeah, and then when it came to making Blackheart, did you feel like nervous at all? Because especially having like Tim being now the singer for so long, and now having Steve on board, did you feel like pressure with a first new album with new vocalists? Because anytime when a band changes like vocalists, there's always that fear of will it work or won't it work? But then when it came to making Blackheart, I feel like it definitely has that was on the yep, this is good.
Good, thanks. No, I didn't have any. I wasn't like nervous about it. I wasn't second guessing anything, and that's mainly because Steve was good, and he knew he had shoes to fill, but he's talented. So when we started doing stuff together, and I think he kept in mind our style. He knew our albums. It was a little bit different than what he was used to, but he kind of came in and he had patterns that were like similar to what we had done in the past. Like, you know, every vocalist has a style with their pattern or their range or whatever. And he did his homework and he did what he could to make it kind of fit without you know, still being himself, but trying not to change the entire sound of the band. And he just did a great job. So after we actually did two singles with him before that, um, Resurgence and World Undone. Those were our sessions where we tested out working together. I think it was in like 2018 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like after we did those, and once we started on Blackheart, he knew what he wanted to sing about and write about. He was super motivated. It felt like he was in the band, or it felt like he had been in the band. Like as soon as we got in my studio and started, it just went and it all felt great. So I wasn't I wasn't worried about anything really. We just did what we do.
Yeah. And I know during that time of Blackheart, I know it was released in 2020 during the whole pandemic. And I know that whole period of the world, I know it kind of like fucked up the whole music industry and stuff. And a lot of bands would like channel that energy within that for you guys, did like the pandemic at all sort of like influence Blackheart at all, or you try to like keep it like completely separate?
Well, it's kind of impossible for it to not impact um, your creative part because yeah, like COVID was confusing and it was unpredictable and it was everybody was just didn't know what the hell was going on. So like yeah, it was a almost dark time you know, here and there for me personally, and I'm sure for a lot of other people we're dealing with shit because but ultimately the idea is to just write when I write, just write however I'm feeling comes out in what I write. So I do think that album in a way it had like kind of a darker feel to it. A little bit more anger, almost like resentment towards the situation with COVID and things that were going on and a bit and like a lot of uncertainty. So it was an uncomfortable time and but also to that it was still important. It was great that we could get together and still make shit together and create stuff because that is what kept us grounded in a way. So, but lyrically, I don't think none of the lyrical content that a lot of that shit was about Steve's life and personal things that he had experienced recently or had been dealing with that he just needed to like get out. So it was a good outlet for him on that one. He had a ton of shit to say, so we didn't have a problem with finding lyrical content, but yeah, I don't know. That's a weird album for me because of the fact that it was COVID and it came out and we did nothing with it. We couldn't tour. It was just kind of like, well, we did that. Now what?
Yeah. And then we get to the new album, Phenomena 2, which comes out in 2 weeks. So how was the whole writing and recording process like for the new album?
It was great. It was super fun. It took 3 years. Again, I did it all at my studio here. We did it all at my studio. Yeah, I'll try to not ramble, but I worked on the demos for about a year and then I started sending stuff to the guys when I felt like I was actually getting a direction. And then obviously the idea came up to do a sequel to the Phenomena in like 2022. That was Steve's idea because he was like, for one, he was like, I'm having trouble like feeling inspired, like what to write about. He's like, I let everything out on Blackheart personally, and he's like, I'm just trying to figure out what to do. Um, and I wrote a song that sounded kind of like Phenomena writing style, and then the idea came back around, and like we were already kind of recording shit and tracking, but the idea came back again, and the album was going to come out a year later than we expected. So this was looking ahead in 2022, and then I'm like, well, shit, it is going to come out 10 years almost to the month that since Phenomena came out. So when we decided to do it, it was a solid 2 more years of writing with this idea in mind, and picking the characters, which was Steve's department. And then as far as like, for me, I had a great time because I started listening to the original Phenomena. I kind of tried to remember where I was and put myself in that place a little bit when I was writing. Because if I was going to hear a part two of an album from another band, I would probably expect to hear some similarities, and otherwise I'd be let down. So I was like, let's bring back some of the guitar effects that I used. Let's, do the same tuning, same kind of song structure without being repetitive. There's still a lot of new and growth with this album, but yeah, overall it was really fun. I had a great time and I felt comfortable because we knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just writing and you don't know what you're doing or what the direction is, but once we knew, it made it a lot easier.
Yeah, and obviously this is the sequel to Phenomenal, which came out 10 years ago. But musically, did you want to continue in the same vein as Blackheart, or did you wanted to also try something new or different that Within the Ruins hasn't done before?
Both. Blackheart, I think some of the song structure and some of the growth, like the parts, the atmospheric stuff, and like some of the things I was doing on Blackheart still came with me into writing this one, because it's just where I'm at right now. And but yeah, I mean, you get to a point where I think you naturally just maybe subconsciously grow, because after you write 6, 7 albums, you yourself know when certain things are boring or when you've done them before. So, as a writer, you're always like checking like, oh, is that really new enough to me or fresh enough to put on, or should I scrap that and go in another direction? It's like always evolving somehow. There's not always like a real definitive answer, but
And then I also loving like the first two singles they released, like Castle in the Sky and the Last Sun, and I think those are like really good songs. So how's like the overall feedback been for those singles?
well, again, I try not to look at comments or reviews because I personally really don't care, and it just kind of fucks with your head. So, but from what the label has told me and Stephen Paulo, what what they've reported back is people are stoked, and I think it's being well received so far. And the Last Sun, I'll say, was a very different song for us to choose as a single because it's a slower song for us. But I think we chose that because we were usually a song like that goes at toward the end of an album and we never play it and we never think of it. But in the album itself, it serves a purpose on the album where it's placed. And we were like, we could put out all the same type of singles we always put out, like fast, shred, chorus, this, that. So we chose that one to put out to kind of throw people off too, because I thought in a way it would be a little unexpected, and it'd probably have some people going, well, I got to wait for the next one to make sure, because it was such a different song for us to put out as a single. But yeah, I think all the feedback from what I've heard has been good.
Yeah. And overall, this is the band's seventh full-length album. So with every album that you make, how hard is it to like come up with like new stuff every time? Does it get easier or harder or with every album?
It's not hard if you don't think about it. Um, it's just something I've done for a long time. So regardless whether we need to put an album out or we're gonna put an album out, I'm still writing because it's just what I like to do. So
Yeah.
yeah, and also we've in a way established the band. We've shown a lot of, we've done 6, 7 albums. You said we've shown a lot of what we can do, and some stuff was forced, some stuff was exploring. But like when it all comes down to it, with this one especially, I just kind of wrote whatever came out. I wasn't trying to do anything special or like off, I just said whatever I write is within the ruins, so it should be good if I like it. And that's kind of how I've felt lately since like Blackheart is just kind of like if you feel inspired and you have the time and you want to write, just write. And you know,
And what
for
does
me,
yeah, and what does sort of like inspire you to create music? I feel like it can be bands that you love or anything which is not music related. So for you, how do you what where do you go to like seek inspiration in order to lay down some sick riffs?
yeah, sometimes it is music. Sometimes it's if I'm angry or like, you know, having a needing some time to myself, I'll sometimes sit down and like really get into it because it's kind of like therapy in a way. I mean, once you get into writing and you're into it, you could go 8 hours could go by and you forget that you're even doing it. So I try to capitalize on when I feel like certain emotions, but yeah, you just have to. I also just have to be ready. Like I haven't sat down and written since this album got turned in like February because I just don't feel like I want to yet. But yeah, I don't know what when things go really good in my life or I get a super like a high on life outside of work and outside of music is a good time to make time to write. But yeah, I'd say like 50% of it is music itself. Like
Yeah.
I try to, if I got to sit down and start writing, or I feel like I need to, I'll listen to as much music as I can until I find something that makes makes a spark, and I go, "Ooh, that's cool. Maybe I should try writing off of something like that."
Yeah. And in terms of like the live show, because I've seen Within the Ruins a couple times, is there like a similar energy to like playing live as opposed to recording, or they're kind of like completely separate?
I got to mention I have another one at another interview thing at 1:30, but that's okay. What was the last part of that question?
And is if there's like any differences or similarities between like playing live or recording?
Oh, yeah, it's a whole nother world. Um, I like recording and I like writing. I don't know, it's two totally different things. You performing is all these other elements, your nerves, different environments, different venues, people. Um, it's not as comfortable for me to play live. If I mean, I love playing live, but it's more comfortable writing and recording and composing. The live stuff is just something that goes with it, and it's just another whole another side of yourself, like performing and how how you put your set together, how you all click on stage, which we have luckily, but yeah, it's a whole nother beast.
Yeah. And so kind of like also in the end to sort of wrap things up, what's next for Within the Ruins? I know we got Phenomena 2 coming out on the 23rd. It's just anything else with the release of Phenomena 2 that you'd like to also plug in terms of tours and stuff?
Yeah, we just announced some Midwest tour dates yesterday. We're working on some Northeast and Canadian dates right now. Those will probably be announced soon. Those will be for October. Um, we're doing a listening party next week here at my brewery. We're going to play the whole album before it comes out, and we're releasing a beer, a limited edition beer for this album. I don't know. We're also trying to do some different types of things as far as content goes. Like we released a guitar only version of Castle in the Sky on our YouTube channel. So we'll probably keep doing some more like isolated track
Yeah.
releases because I think stuff like that is just as cool as hearing the song in the first place
Yeah.
for the first time. But when you get to hear just vocals or just drums or just guitars, just bass, it's like
Yeah.
a whole nother experience. So we're trying to come up with cool stuff like that to throw out there with this release.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'm looking forward to the Phenomena too. A great sequel to 10 years later we get another Phenomena. It would be a cool idea if you did a tour where you play both Phenomena 1 and 2 back to back.
you're not the first person to say that, and we have talked about that within the band. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
So thank you, Joe, for this conversation. Is there just any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close this out?
Well, thank you for your time, and yeah, check out the two singles that we have out now, and definitely grab the album and give it some time. Listen to it from front to back, as intended, if you want, and enjoy it. I hope everyone just enjoys it because that's the reason we do it.
Oh yeah. So everybody, Joe from Within the Ruins. We'll see you next time.